It is told in the book that he was a servant in the desert, not because of an enemy, not because of fate, because of his own choices. And the day he decided to change, he had nothing. Not a coin, not a friend, not a future. What happened next changed everything. Babylon, city of gold and ambition, where every man who arrived with empty hands believed, with enough will, he could leave with full ones. Dabasir was born here, son of a saddle maker, a trade passed down through generations, honest work, steady work. But Dabasir was young, and young men in Babylon were surrounded by beautiful things they could not yet afford. So he borrowed, first for a robe, then for a feast, then for a gift to a woman who smiled at him in the market. Small debts, harmless debts, the kind that feel invisible until the day they become impossible. He told himself what every man in debt tells himself: I will repay it soon, things will improve, the next season will be better. But the next season was not better. It was heavier. The debts grew. The creditors came, first politely, then loudly, then with the kind of silence that is worse than any shouting. Dabasir ran. He left Babylon in the dark, slipping through the gates like a shadow, telling himself it was a fresh start, a new city, a new life. It was neither. He fell into the company of thieves, men who took what they could not earn. He told himself it was temporary, that he had no choice. He always had a choice. He was captured and sold, a slave in the Syrian desert, owned by a man named Jalal, wearing a collar of bronze around his neck. The proud son of a Babylonian saddle maker, reduced to tending camels under a burning sun. He had reached the bottom, not the bottom of bad luck, the bottom of his own decisions. There was a woman in that place, Sirah, the first wife of his master, a woman with quiet eyes and a voice like still water. She did not pity him. She asked him a question instead. Tell me, Dabasir, in your soul, do you carry the spirit of a slave or the spirit of a free man? He stared at her. She continued, because a slave says, this is my fate, I accept it. But a free man, even in chains, says this is not where I belong, and he finds a way. She looked at him steadily. Is there a way back to Babylon for you? And for the first time in years, Dabasir thought not about escape, but about return. Not running away from something, running toward something. He thought of his creditors, the men he had wronged, the debts he had abandoned. And something shifted inside him. Not hope, something harder than hope. Resolve. I am a free man, he said, and I will return to Babylon, and I will repay every man I owe. Sirah helped him escape that night. She gave him food for the journey, and 3 words he carried across the desert. Prove it first. The desert almost killed him. 3 days without water, sun like a hammer, sand in every direction. But he did not die, because a man with a purpose moves differently than a man who is merely surviving. He arrived in Babylon thin as shadow, wearing rags, his feet bleeding. He went first not to his home, but to his creditors. He stood before each one and said 5 words that most men in debt never say. I owe you. I will pay. No excuses, no explanations, no requests for more time before he'd offered even a plan. Just the truth, spoken plainly. Then he built his plan. He divided everything he earned into 3 parts. 7 parts of every 10 to feed himself, clothe himself, live. 2 parts of every 10 to his creditors, divided fairly among them, shared honestly. 1 part of every 10 kept for himself, saved, growing slowly, the beginning of something. Every month he came to each creditor. Some laughed at the small amount, but he came, every month, without fail, without excuse. And slowly, the way a river shapes stone not by force, but by persistence, the debts began to shrink. The story of Dabasir teaches what no school in Babylon would admit. Debt is not a disaster. Debt is a decision, and the path out of it begins not with gold, but with honesty. First, own what you owe. Do not hide from it. Do not rename it. Stand in front of it and say, "This is mine. I created it. I will resolve it." Second, make a plan, not a wish. Wishes say, "I will pay when I have more." Plans say, "I will pay what I can, now, every time." Third, live within what remains, not what you desire, not what your neighbor has, what you actually earn after your obligations are met. Fourth, protect one portion always for yourself. Even one coin saved while in debt is the first stone of a new foundation. And fifth, do not let shame paralyze you. Shame is the luxury of a man who does nothing. The man who acts has no time for shame. Dabasir did not become rich overnight. He became reliable. And in Babylon, a reliable man was eventually trusted with more than gold. He was trusted with opportunity. Years later, Dabasir sat in his own home, debt-free, respected, at peace. Not because fortune found him, but because he stopped running from what he owed and started walking toward what he could become. He wrote his story on clay tablets, not to impress anyone, but so that the next man, sitting in the dust of his own choices, might find those words and know. The desert does not have to be the end of your story. It can be the beginning of the real one. And now, the question is not about Dabasir. It is about you. Not what you owe, not what you fear, not what you have already lost, but this, right now, today. What is the first honest step you are willing to take? Because the road back to Babylon begins with a single decision, and that decision is not made in gold. It is made in the quiet, difficult, unglamorous moment when a man looks at himself clearly and chooses to begin.